This video is brought to you by Dr. Kristen R. Bromley's Guitar Method Book Series and Online Music Academy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kristen Bromley. Welcome to my online academy. It's so great to have you joining me here in these online lessons. This is lesson 6 in this series that is all about jazz guitar. I love jazz guitar, as you know, if you've been participating in these lessons, and I assume that you do as well. So what a great setting for us to be here working on jazz guitar together. In this lesson, we're going to build on what I did in the last lesson. So in the last lesson, we looked at two different forms or two different shapes for playing major 6-chord arpeggios. And this is important. As I explained there, when we're improvising, we've got to be able to play melodies with the chord tones, and then we learn how to use the other notes that exist out of the 12 notes in the chromatic scale to build tension that then resolves to those. So as we start learning to improvise melodies and improvise lines and solos, we need to be able to improvise with just the chord tones, and then we can start learning how to build other things around that. So in this lesson, we're going to specifically be working on improvising with those two forms, which are two really great forms to start with. I'm not going to really review them in much detail here. If you need help with learning them, check out the last lesson, but I do have them up here on the board. So one with the lowest root on the 6th string, one with the lowest root on the 5th string. We learned how to work around the circle of force. We're going to be working around the circle of force as we improvise here in this lesson. So I do have them up here on the board if you need the reference, but if you want to learn them and need help with that, check out that last lesson. So the first thing I'm going to do in this lesson is we're going to work on improvising right over top a backing track. This backing track will work its way around the circle of force. I have a review of the circle of force up here on the board in case you need that. So we're going to go from C to F to B flat to E flat to A flat to D flat, come around to G flat, then B, E, A, D, G, and C. We're going to get 8 measures with the backing track of each one of these chords. So we'll be able to improvise melodic ideas for 8 bars in one key, and then we'll move on to the next key. So in the last lesson, we actually worked on moving through these two forms through the circle of force using those shapes. And we're going to do that same sort of thing here, only instead of playing the arpeggios, just straight up, we're going to improvise ideas. So we'll start off by doing that, and then after we've done that, I'm going to give some techniques for working on gaining fluidity within these shapes and starting to learn to play melodies a little bit easier. What I found with most of my in-person students is that it's kind of tricky to sort of get past learning the shape and being able to play it, just play it, to actually improvising melodies using those notes can be a little bit of a trick, and then moving from one key to the next can be a little bit of a trick. So after I take us through this backing track and we improvise over the top, I'm going to give some techniques for ways you can work through these arpeggios and start gaining more fluidity with creating melodies inside of them. So it's going to be great. We're going to go ahead and just get started here. Now, this backing track, you can jam along with this video as much as you want right over the top of me, and that's actually a great thing to do. As I start playing here, you can improvise right along with me and just sort of play while I'm playing. That's completely fine. You can also steal ideas from things that I improvise as we're playing over this track. That's a great thing to do. That's how we learn this language. Just like when we're a little toddler and even younger, infancy, and even in the womb, as we're listening and listening, and then we start trying to emulate the words that we hear others say, and then we start to create phrases and sentences and so on. And pretty soon we're talking with some fluidity, but we started out by sort of stealing what we were hearing from others. And we do that same sort of thing when we improvise melodies and when we improvise the way we're playing chords and so on. It's all about learning from others and incorporating that, and then we come up with our own way of phrasing things and playing ideas. So as I go through here, you can just listen as a demonstration, but you can also just play along, and if you hear something you like, you can sort of steal that if you want to. But after we play through this one time through, 8 bars per chord, as I said, and these will be C6, F6, and so on. I just put the roots down. But after that, I'll give some techniques for working through the fluidity. And if you want to play those show, not with me, you want to play just with the backing track, they are available on the channel as well. So down in the description below, there's a link. You can click on it. You'll have a video that just plays this backing track, so you can play along with it as much as you'd like to without me playing over the top. And it's also going to be available. There'll be a playlist with the jazz jam along backing tracks. It'll just be a playlist for those jam along tracks for the jazz course. So there'll be a playlist where you can just go in and find. Right now, this will be the only one there, but as we continue, there will be lots more added throughout the course. So lots of jam along tracks that you can play right along with a rhythm section on. So, okay, we're going to go ahead now. As I start this backing track, it's going to have M4N in the snare drum, M4N, and then we'll be in. And we'll start off with that key of C, 8 bars, move to F, 8 bars, and so on. So here we go, let's do it. So here we are in C, just using those arpeggio notes. Flat. Now E flat. A flat. Now D flat. Now we're going to be in G flat. Now B. Now E. Now A. Now D. Now G. Now C. So, just like that. So fun. And as I mentioned, down in the description below, there's a link. You can click on that link to play along with a video that just has that backing track. So you can play along with that as much as you would like to and practice that skill. And also on the channel, there is a playlist, Jazz Jam Along Tracks. All the tracks like these that we use with the different tunes, the different exercises will be uploaded and placed in that playlist, so you'll be able to find them. Right now, this is the only one that is there because this is the first one that we're using, but as we proceed through this course, there will be many, many, many backing tracks for the different tunes and the different exercises that we do, so you'll be able to find those there in sort of one easy, complete set. So lots of help, and of course you can play right along with what I just did to steal ideas and just sort of get inside of it if you'd like to as well. Okay, so now most of my in-person students struggle with going straight from having learned the arpeggio shape to improvising with it. It's just sort of a challenging thing. They can see the entire shape and play it up and down, but then it's like sometimes it's harder to start getting melodic ideas flowing. So as I complete this lesson here, I'm going to give a few technical things, a few things that you can work on to get inside of the arpeggio shapes that can help you with just gaining more fluidity in the improvisation side of improvising with those notes. So as we go through this, I'm going to mention that most of the time as we're improvising, we stay on the top 4 strings of the guitar, and then occasionally we go lower. Probably 98% of what I played, maybe more, in that last go through, I stayed on the top 4 strings, and then occasionally I went lower. So it can be really helpful to just work the arpeggios on the top 4 strings. So a lot of times we'll start memorizing them, we see them from these low strings, and then we want to stay down there on more of our bass strings on the guitar, but our melodies happen on the higher strings. So we can start to break away from that by seeing the higher part of the arpeggio in and of itself. When finding the root, you notice that there is a root 2 frets higher, 2 strings higher. So we skip over a string, skip over a fret, and we get to the next highest root, and that's for both shapes. So when I'm playing in the key of C here at the 8th fret, if I stick my index finger at that 8th fret on that C, and I skip over I skip over a string, so 2 strings higher, and skip over a fret, so 2 frets higher, I have the next root. And so I can find that shape from there, and I didn't always when I was improvising, I've sort of worked the fingerings to do these arpeggios both with my pinky and with the shift where I use my ring finger instead, which is usually more comfortable depending on what I'm doing, but I've worked on the guitar so much so that I can do them either way. You want to be able to work on them either way, really. But because of that, you can start with your ring finger right there and just see that F chord, just that F chord shape on top, and just play there and then add that 6th to it. And then I can reach down for that lower 6. So I want to be able to play this arpeggio just there. And then as I move up to the next shape, it's also, if I can see where that root is, so I'm finding these, by still knowing where the root is, putting my index finger on that root, finding that ring finger, 2 strings higher, 2 frets higher, so skip over a string, skip over a fret, and I got my ring finger on the F there for the key of F, which is the next one around the circle of 4s, and I can play just that top part, coming down and back. Now in this case, all we're leaving off is this low root, but it's still good to be able to do this from the inside. Let's do that together here, going around the circle of 4s. Now I'm going to play these a little bit faster as far as the tempo goes than I did in the last lesson, because I'm assuming you've kind of got them down and you've got a little fluidity. You can keep up with a little bit faster tempo, and we won't take as long here in the lesson. So we'll go back here, 1 and 2 and ready and go, and we got C. Now we'll go up to F and flat, then E flat, then A flat, then D flat, G flat, then B, then E, then A, then D, then G, then we're back to C. Just like that. Now, when I start to gain control there, it's great. I want to practice starting these arpeggios on any of the notes in the top 4 strings especially. So, I'm not going to go around the circle of 4ths entirely doing this, but just as an example, I could start on the 6th that happens below the root. And I can just take up, I could choose to take up a couple measures of time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I can take up as much time as it takes to go through all like 2 measures of time. I can do that in 8th notes. It's a great thing to do, just arpeggiating up and down. Or I can just take and do what we were doing there. We kind of stopped on 3-ish in the beat dish and then moved on to the next chord. But in that case, I just went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You can stop on 4, gives you a second to go to the next one. For the F chord, then I'd have to start on that 6, and I've got lower notes I can go to, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I started right there on the 3rd, and then I come over to B flat, and I get used to starting on the 6th there. And then I start on the E flat and do the same thing. Oops, sorry. And I can go around the circle of 4ths doing that. So just like I started on that 6th, I'd want to practice starting on the 3rd. So this one right here. And then I want to practice, I just ended on the 3rd, but I can start on the 3rd there for F. And then I go and start on the 3rd for B flat. So I practice starting on the 3rd. Then I practice starting on the 5th. So back in C. And then I got to start on the 5th with that F. And then I'm going to start on the 5th for B flat. And the 5th for E flat. And so on and so forth. Once I've done the 5th, I can do the 6th. I can do the root on top for this higher one. We don't have a root on top for the, when I say higher one, we have this higher root for the 6th string form that we don't have on the 5th string form. We stop at the 6th. So I wouldn't have that one there, but I could practice starting there. Now everything that I just did started with ascending. I could descend. So starting on that high root, for example, I could descend first. I have to in this case. And I could do that one working with that high form. If I start on the 6th for each of these, so if I start on the 6th for C6, I would descend first. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the higher one for F. When I say higher one, I mean the 5th string form. And then I could work through them starting with those descending ideas. That getting where we can start on any note within the form is so helpful because we can find any note within the form. And as we're playing melodies, we don't always start on the root. As a matter of fact, the better we get, a lot of times we start on other notes besides the root, or at least as often as we do start on the root. So we get a lot of different variety that way. So this helps us getting inside of these arpeggio shapes by learning to start the arpeggio on any note within the arpeggio is really helpful. And you could do it for 8 bars. 8 bars is a bit much, but working through it, just a couple bars on each chord around the circle of 4ths, I found to be extremely helpful for both me and my in-person students that I have observed so much over the last many, many years. So we've got that as an exercise. Now, one step beyond that, which becomes really, really helpful, is to actually change up where you're switching from chord to chord. So I'm going to take 2 bars, for example, and I'm just going to play. And I'm going to start right here on this root. So I'm going to go 1 and 2, and so when I say this root, I'm on the C. So we're back to C. So I go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and wherever I left off and whatever direction that I'm going. So I'm descending. As I now go to the F chord, I want to find the closest chord tone out of the next arpeggio. So I just ended there on the 3rd, which is the 6th. I ended on the 6th of this chord, the C chord, but it's going to be the 3rd of that chord. So as I descend and go to F now, I've got to jump down to the root. And I'm going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now where I just ended, I'm going to B flat, and I can jump down and continue descending. So I take to the root, and now I'm inside that shape. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and now I need to jump. I'm on the 3rd of the next chord, or the 6th of the current chord, B flat, but I got to jump up to the next note for what will be the E flat chord and continue there. So I got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and now I'm descending and I'm going to the A flat chord, so I can step down to the closest one. And now I need to jump up to the closest one for D flat. And now I need to go to the closest one for G flat, and this is going to be tricky. This is going to be one place where we're going to have a big skip since I'm not going lower and I'm going higher. So I could just continue or start over at the next, whatever string I'm on, just skip there. And I got 1 and 2 and 3 and now I'm going down for the B. And now I'm going up for the E. And now I'm going down for the A. And now I'm going up for the D. And I'm going down for the 6th, or for the G to the 6th. And now I've got C. And you just work your way through those. Really, really helpful, because as you connect to melodies, especially as we start playing tunes where maybe a chord only lasts for 1 bar, moving from one chord to the next, playing through the changes, as we like to say in jazz, happens as we can connect those chord tones. So working on that as an exercise is a great thing to do. I started with the root on our first chord here. I could repeat it starting in a different place on the 3rd, and I can ascend first or descend first. There's lots of ways to work through it, but as you do, you gain so much control and sort of just are able to improvise inside of these arpeggios so much better. And as we start adding other techniques to the improvisation skill, we can see those arpeggio notes so well and be able to do those other techniques a lot easier as well. So it's a great thing to work on or start working on now as you're ready, and then improvise over the top of those backing tracks as much as you'd like to, and you'll be ready to move on to the tunes that we're going to do and the other improvisation skills that we'll do. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the dominant 7th chord. So we need to look at the dominant 7th chord and gain some fluidity inside of that dominant 7th chord, the way we've been working on the major 6th chord. We just got to change one note to our arpeggio and we'll be off to the races with that one. And then once we've gotten some work with the dominant 7th chord, we're ready to start working on some tunes that have major chords and dominant chords. And of course, we'll work on those minor chords as well. And we'll start learning how to add other things to our improvisation besides just the chord tones. Lots of great things with improvisation coming. Of course, right now, we're not going over the chords, but you can continue if you want to work with those shell voicings. Comping with different chord progressions is a great thing. We're going to do that again together as we start working on tunes. So when we do the tunes, we got the melodies, we got the chords that we're comping, and the improvised solo. All three things come together. But as I do these lessons, I focus in on one key part at a time. So here we are working on improvising with these major 6 chords. So fun. And now we're going to move as we continue in the course to the dominant 7th chords. Take care, have fun, keep at it, and we'll see you again. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For more in-depth lessons and to progress through a free guitar course, check out my Guitar 101 series on YouTube and my guitar method books, which all come with access to hours of in-depth video lessons. You can find more information about me and my products at kristenbromley.com. Take care.